My name is Rosie Carter, and I was 16 when I started working at my family's business, Carter Supplies, a small, cluttered warehouse on the outskirts of Charlotte, North Carolina. Back then, it was nothing to brag about, just a drafty building with creaky wooden floors, flickering lights, and shelves packed with dusty boxes of industrial supplies. My friends were out at football games or sneaking into movies, but I was there, hauling crates, sorting inventory, and answering customer calls with a smile, even when my back ached and my eyes burned from late nights. My dad, Victor, called it character building. I called it my life. I didn't mind the work, though. That warehouse was my second home, every corner marked by my sweat and determination. I'd spend hours organizing the chaos, color-coding inventory lists, fixing the ancient computer system, even scrubbing the floors when things got slow. Dad noticed, at least at first. He'd pat my shoulder and say, "You've got a head for this, Rosie. Better than most of the guys I've hired." That meant the world to me because Victor wasn't the type to hand out praise. He was gruff, always stressed, always barking orders. But those words, they kept me going, made me believe I was part of something bigger. My brother, Nathan, was a different story. 3 years older than me, he was the golden child, tall, charming, with a smile that could talk him out of anything. While I was knee-deep in invoices, Nathan was off finding himself at fancy colleges, one after another. He'd flunk out, party too hard, or just get bored, but Dad never held it against him. "He'll figure it out," Dad would say, waving off Nathan's latest screw-up. "He just needs time." Time was a luxury I never got. For me, it was always expectations: be perfect, work harder, don't mess up. By the time I was 25, I'd turned Carter Supplies into a regional distribution company, with contracts across the Southeast and a reputation for reliability. I'd built a customer service team, digitized our operations, and negotiated deals that tripled our revenue. By 28, we were worth $60 million. And still, I was just helping out. I wasn't a partner, wasn't even on salary, just the daughter who kept things running. I told myself it didn't matter, that my loyalty would pay off one day, that Dad would see me as the one who made it all happen. I believed that if I kept working, kept proving myself, I'd earn my place. But last Friday, everything I'd built, everything I'd sacrificed for, came crashing down in a single moment. We were in the office, Dad, Nathan, and me. Dad was sipping his coffee, casual as ever, when he dropped the bomb. "Starting next quarter, Nathan's taking over operations and growth strategy," he said, like he was talking about the weather. I froze. That was my role, the one I'd built from nothing. Nathan smirked, leaning back in his chair like he owned the place. "Time to step aside, Rosie," he said. Then he added, "You're worthless now." The words hit me like a knife, but what hurt more was Dad's silence. He didn't defend me, didn't even look at me. He just nodded. "It's for the best," he said. That was the moment I knew I wasn't just the daughter. I was the one they'd used, and now they thought they could throw me away. I didn't cry, didn't argue. I just stood, grabbed my bag, and walked out, the door clicking shut behind me. But as I left, I made a promise to myself. They thought I'd fade away, that I'd let them erase me. They had no idea what was coming. 'Cause I wasn't just the girl who helped. I was the one who'd built this company, and I was about to show them exactly what that meant. The weekend after that meeting felt like a lifetime. I didn't sleep, didn't eat, just sat in my apartment replaying Nathan's words over and over. "You're worthless now." I'd given everything to Carter Supplies, my teenage years, my 20s, every ounce of energy I had. I'd missed friends' weddings, skipped vacations, stayed late while everyone else went home. I'd turned a failing warehouse into a $60 million business, and in one sentence, my own brother had reduced me to nothing. What hurt even more was Dad's reaction, or lack of one. I'd waited for him to say something, anything, to stand up for me. But he didn't. He just sat there, sipping his coffee like I was a piece of furniture he'd decided to replace. I thought about all the times I'd gone above and beyond for the company. The nights I'd stayed until 2 a.m. to fix a shipment error, the weekends I'd spent training new hires, the countless deals I'd closed because I knew how to talk to clients like they were family. I'd built systems from scratch, turned chaos into order, made Carter Supplies a name people trusted. And for what? To be told I was worthless by the brother who'd never lifted a finger, who'd spent his life partying while I worked. To be dismissed by the father I'd spent my whole life trying to make proud? The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined, not because I believed Nathan's words, but because Dad did. I kept going back to the way Nathan had smirked, so smug, so sure he'd won. He'd always been like that, charming on the outside, but careless, entitled, always expecting the world to bend to him. He'd never cared about the business, never shown up when it mattered, but Dad had always given him a pass. "He's your brother, Rosie," Dad would say whenever I complained about Nathan's absence. "He'll come around." But he never did, and now here he was, waltzing in to take everything I'd built like it was his birthright. I thought about Dad, too. His gruff voice, his rare smiles, the way he'd always made me feel like I had to earn his approval while Nathan got it for free. I'd spent my life trying to prove I was enough, but in that moment I realized I never would be, not to him. By Sunday night, the hurt had turned into something else. Anger, yes, but also clarity. I wasn't going to let them erase me. I'd built Carter Supplies, not them, and I wasn't going to walk away without a fight. I started digging through old files, pulling out every document I could find, contracts, emails, anything that showed my contributions. And then I found it, a shareholder agreement from 2015, signed by Dad when we were struggling to stay afloat. It granted me 20% equity in lieu of a salary, a temporary measure he'd said would be fixed later. He'd never fixed it, but those shares were still mine. And with the 15% I'd inherited from my late mom, something Nathan and Dad had never bothered to check, I owned 35% of the company. That wasn't just a stake, it was power. Real power. I spent the rest of the night preparing, not out of revenge, but out of necessity. I wasn't going to let them take what I'd built. They thought I'd left quietly, that I'd fade into the background like my years of sacrifice didn't matter. But I was done being invisible. Monday morning, I'd walk back into Carter Supplies, not as the daughter, not as the helper, but as the woman who'd built it all, ready to take back what was mine. They had no idea what was coming, but they were about to find out. Monday morning arrived, and I stood outside Carter Supplies, staring at the building I'd poured my life into. The warehouse had transformed over the years. Now a sleek headquarters with glass windows and a sign that read Carter Supplies, Southeast's trusted distributor. I'd overseen every change, from the new paint to the modern office layout, but today it felt different. It wasn't mine anymore, or so they thought. I took a deep breath, straightened my blazer, and walked through the front doors, my heels clicking on the polished floor. The receptionist, Clara, gave me a hesitant smile, her eyes wide with sympathy. She'd heard what happened, I could tell. Everyone had. The office buzzed with its usual Monday energy, phones ringing, keyboards clacking, the hum of conversation. But as I walked through, the noise faded, replaced by whispers. "She's back," someone murmured. "I thought she quit," another voice said. "Didn't Nathan take over?" I kept my head high, ignoring the stares, the questions in their eyes. I wasn't here to explain myself, I was here to take back what was mine. My office was exactly as I'd left it, a small space at the end of the hall with a desk, a filing cabinet, and a photo of me and Mom from years ago. I sat down, booted up my computer, and pulled a folder from my bag. Every document I'd gathered over the weekend, every piece of proof I needed. I opened the shareholder agreement, the one Dad had signed back in 2015, and stared at the numbers, 20% equity plus the 15% from Mom's estate. That made me the largest individual shareholder at 35%. Dad owned 30%, Nathan had 10%, and the rest was split among minor investors. I'd always known about the shares, but I'd never thought I'd need to use them. Not like this. I'd trusted Dad to do right by me, to give me the recognition I deserved. But he hadn't, and now I had to fight for it myself. I typed up a formal request for an emergency board meeting, my fingers steady on the keyboard, and sent it to the board members. This wasn't about emotion, it was about facts, and I had them all. 9:30 a.m., Dad stormed into my office, Nathan trailing behind him, his face twisted with irritation. "What the hell are you doing, Rosie?" Dad snapped, his voice low and sharp. "You walked out. That means you're done." Nathan crossed his arms, smirking. "Yeah, everyone saw you leave. You're out." I turned my monitor to face them, the shareholder agreement glowing on the screen. "Not quite," I said, my voice calm. "This is the agreement you signed, Dad. You gave me 20% equity, and with Mom's 15%, I own 35% of this company. The more than either of you." Dad's face went pale, his eyes narrowing as he leaned closer to the screen. "That was temporary," he said. "You never put an expiration date on it," I replied. Nathan's smirk faded, replaced by confusion. "What does that even mean?" he stammered. I slid the folder across the desk. "It means I've called a board meeting in 30 minutes, I said. "We're voting on leadership roles." Dad stared at me, his jaw tight like he was seeing me for the first time. Nathan sputtered, "You can't do that." But I could, and I would. I'd spent years being the quiet one, the one who fixed everything while they took the credit. But not anymore. They thought I was worthless, that I'd step aside without a fight. They were wrong. I stood up, folder in hand, and walked past them toward the boardroom. This wasn't just about taking back my role, it was about taking back my voice, my worth, everything they tried to strip away. The battle was just beginning, and I was ready. The boardroom was tense, the air thick with anticipation as I walked in. The long table was surrounded by the board members, 8 of them, a mix of old-timers who'd been with Dad since the beginning and newer investors I'd brought on during our expansion. They all turned to look at me, their expressions a mix of curiosity and unease. I took a seat at the head of the table, a spot I'd never claimed before, but one I knew was mine now. Dad and Nathan entered a moment later, Dad's face set in a hard line, Nathan slouching into a chair with a scowl. "Drama queen," he muttered under his breath. I ignored him, focusing on the task at hand. "Let's begin," I said, my voice steady. Dad cleared his throat, trying to take control. "Before we start, I'd like to clarify," I cut him off. "We're not here for clarification, Dad. We're here for a vote." I tapped my tablet, projecting a document onto the screen. Proposal, Leadership Realignment Vote. Underneath, in bold, it cited the Shareholder Voting Rights Agreement. Any holder of more than 25% equity could call for a leadership vote, with a simple majority required to pass. "I currently hold 35% of Carter's supplies," I said, my voice clear. "Through the equity you gave me, Dad, and the shares I inherited from Mom." The room went silent, every eye on Dad. Nathan straightened, his face red. "Inheritance?" he snapped. "You never told us that." I turned to him, calm but firm. "Maybe if you'd paid attention to the business instead of your parties, you'd have known," I continued, addressing the board. "For the past 12 years, I've overseen every major expansion, negotiated our biggest contracts, and built our customer retention to industry-leading levels. I turned this company from a failing warehouse into a $60 million business. But last week, I was told I'm worthless, that I need to step aside for someone who's never shown up." I paused, letting the words sink in. "I'm not stepping aside." Dad raised a hand, his voice sharp. "This company is mine." "I founded it, I built it," I interrupted, pulling up a graph on the screen. "You started it, Dad, but I built it. Look at the numbers, revenue, profit margins, market share." They all skyrocketed the year I took over operations. The board members shifted in their seats, murmuring to each other. Margaret Ellis, one of the senior members, spoke up. "Rosie, what exactly are you proposing?" I looked at her, my gaze steady. "I'm proposing a vote on who leads this company moving forward. Me or them?" Another member, Paul, asked. "And if the board doesn't vote in your favor?" I smiled, but it was cold. "Then I'll sell my 35% to a competitor. Let's see how long Carter Supplies lasts then." The room went still, the weight of my words settling over everyone. Even Nathan's cocky grin faltered. "You wouldn't," Dad snapped. "I would," I said. "And I will." One by one, the votes came in. Margaret was first. "I vote for Rosie Carter as CEO," she said, her voice firm. The others followed, some hesitant, some confident, but it didn't matter. When the final tally appeared on the screen, Rosie Carter 5 votes, Victor Carter 3, I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. It was done. Dad stood, his face unreadable, and walked out without a word. Nathan sat there, stunned, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. I looked at him, my voice low. "You said I was worthless," I said. "I just proved you wrong." I stood, my heart pounding but my head high, and walked out of the boardroom, not as the helper but as the leader I'd always been. The news of the boardroom vote spread through Carter Supplies like wildfire. By Tuesday morning, the office was a mix of tension and uncertainty. Employees whispered as I walked by, their conversations dying mid-sentence. Some looked at me with wide eyes like I'd just staged a coup. Others avoided my gaze, unsure where their loyalties should lie. I understood. I'd always been the quiet one, the one who fixed things behind the scenes, while Dad was the face of the company and Nathan the charming heir. Now I was the CEO and no one knew what to make of it. But I wasn't here to play games. I was here to lead. I showed up early, as always, greeting Claire at the front desk with a smile, stopping by the operations floor to check on the team, answering emails before most people had even clocked in. Being CEO wasn't about the title, it was about showing up, doing the work, proving I was the right person for the job. But not everyone was ready to accept that. That afternoon, I found a note slipped under my office door, written in Nathan's messy scrawl. "You think this is over?" "It's not." I stared at it for a long moment, then tucked it into my drawer. Let him rage. He didn't understand that I hadn't won through manipulation, I'd won through preparation, through years of showing up when he never did. But Nathan wasn't the only one pushing back. By Wednesday, I started hearing whispers, rumors that I was planning to sell the company, that I'd forced the vote to cash out and leave everyone jobless. I knew exactly who was behind it. Nathan had been meeting with department heads, spinning lies to undermine me, painting himself as the rightful leader who'd save the company from my reckless takeover. It was classic Nathan. When he couldn't win, he'd try to burn everything down. I wasn't going to let him. I called Linda, our head of PR, and told her to schedule a company-wide meeting for Friday morning. "Everyone," I said. "Every department, every employee." She hesitated. "That'll raise more questions," she said. "Good," I replied. "Let's answer them." I spent the next day preparing, not just for the meeting, but for the future. I put together a plan, Carter 2.0 I called it, a vision for the next 10 years. New market expansions, an employee profit-sharing program, leadership training for underrepresented staff, tech upgrades to make their jobs easier. I wanted to show the team what real leadership looked like, not the empty promises Nathan was peddling. I thought about the years I'd given to this company, the sacrifices I'd made, the way I'd always put the business first. Nathan and Dad had taken that for granted, but I wasn't going to let their betrayal define me. I was the CEO now, and I was going to lead on my terms, not theirs. As I worked late that night, my phone buzzed. It was Dad. I stared at the screen, my heart racing before answering. "Rosie," he said, his voice gruff. "We need to talk. Face to face." I hesitated, then agreed. "Fine," I said. "I'll come to the house." I hung up, a mix of dread and determination settling in my chest. I'd faced the board, faced Nathan's lies, but facing Dad one-on-one was different. He'd always been the one I wanted to impress, the one whose approval I'd craved. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I was the leader of Carter Supplies, and I was ready to make him see that, whether he liked it or not. I pulled up to my parents' house just after 8 p.m., the familiar sight of the old brick two-story stirring a mix of nostalgia and unease. Porch light glowed softly, illuminating the peeling paint and the rose bushes Mom had planted years ago. As a kid, this house had been my safe haven, full of laughter, Sunday dinners, the smell of Mom's cooking. Now it felt like a battlefield, a place where I'd have to face the man who'd built me up and torn me down in the same breath. I took a deep breath and walked inside, finding Dad in the living room, sitting in his old recliner with a glass of bourbon in his hand. He didn't stand when I entered, just gestured to the couch across from him. "I heard about the vote," he said, his voice low, tired. "You were there," I replied, sitting down, my hands clasped in my lap. "You know what happened?" He nodded, his eyes fixed on the glass in his hand. "You embarrassed me, Rosie," he said. I raised an eyebrow, my voice steady. "You tried to erase me." The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of years of unspoken hurt. Dad took a long sip of his bourbon, then set the glass down, his shoulders slumping. "You were never supposed to take it this far," he said. "No," I shot back. "I was never supposed to fight back." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I hadn't expected. Regret, maybe, or realization. "You were my daughter," he said, his voice softer now. "I thought you understood the plan." I frowned, confused. "What plan?" He sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "Nathan was always going to lead. That's how it was supposed to be. You were supposed to support him. You were good at that." The words hit me like a punch, confirming what I'd always feared. I'd spent my life building Carter Supplies, but to Dad, I was just the helper, the one who'd prop up Nathan while he took the spotlight. "I built this company," I said, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and hurt. "I was there when we couldn't pay the bills. I stayed late when the shipments failed. I landed our first big contract. And you still saw me as support?" He didn't answer, just looked away, his jaw tight. "You chose him," I said, quieter now. "Even when he did nothing. Even when I gave everything." Dad's eyes met mine again, and for the first time I saw a crack in his stoic facade. "He's my son," he said, as if that explained everything. "And I'm your daughter," I replied, my voice rising. "But that was never enough for you, was it?" The silence stretched between us, thick and heavy, until he finally spoke. "You were always the better leader," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I didn't think the world would accept you. I thought Nathan would be easier for them to follow." I stared at him, the weight of his words sinking in. He hadn't just underestimated me. He'd underestimated the world, too. "You were wrong," I said, my voice steady now. "The board followed me. Clients will follow me. The world already is." He nodded, a slow, resigned gesture. "So what now?" he asked. I looked him in the eye, my resolve unshaken. "Now I lead. You can accept it or you can get out of my way." I stood, not waiting for his response, and walked out, the door closing behind me with a soft click. I'd faced him, said what I needed to say, and for the first time I felt free, not from his approval but from the need for it. Friday morning came, and I stood at the front of our largest conference room, the space packed with over 120 employees. Some sat in chairs, others stood along the walls, their faces a mix of curiosity, worry, and skepticism. I'd never addressed them like this before. Not as CEO, not as Rosie Carter, the woman who'd just turned the company's power structure upside down. I stepped up to the mic, no notes, no script, just the truth I'd been holding on to for years. "I know a lot has happened this week," I began, my voice steady despite the nerves in my stomach. "And I know you're wondering what this means for the company, for your jobs, for your future here." The room was silent, every eye on me. "Let's clear the air," I continued. "No, I'm not selling the company. No, I'm not planning layoffs. And no, this isn't a power grab. This is about evolution." I gestured to the screen behind me where a presentation lit up. Carter 2.0, the next 10 years. I walked them through the plan: new market expansions, a profit-sharing program for employees, leadership training for women and underrepresented staff, tech upgrades to streamline their work. I wanted them to see what real change looked like, not the chaos Nathan was trying to stir. "For too long, this company was stuck in old ways," I said. "Leadership based on family name, not skill. Decisions made behind closed doors, not in the best interest of our team. I'm here to lead, and I want to show you what that means." I paused, letting my gaze sweep the room. "I know you've heard rumors," I said, my voice hardening. "That I forced my way into this role, that I don't know how to lead, that I'm here to cash out. Let me tell you something, I gave up my 20s for this company. I missed birthdays, friendships, sleep. I didn't do that to flip a paycheck. I did it because I believe in what we can become." I softened, my voice earnest. "If anyone here doesn't think I'm the right person to lead, my door is open. Come talk to me." Quiet laugh broke the tension, then a few more. Then a single clap, followed by another, until the room erupted in applause. Not forced but real, the kind that made my chest ache with pride. I stepped away from the mic, my heart pounding but my head high. I'd shown them who I was, not the daughter, not the helper, but the leader they deserved. But I knew Nathan wasn't done. Later that day, Linda called me, her voice tense. "Nathan's been meeting with clients," she said. "He's telling them you're unstable, that the company's at risk under you." I closed my eyes, breathing deeply. Of course he was. If he couldn't win the employees, he'd go after the clients, trying to sabotage me from the outside. I wasn't going to let him. "Set up meetings with our top clients," I told Linda. "I'll talk to them myself." I'd built those relationships, earned their trust. Nathan could try to tear me down, but I'd fight for what was mine, every step of the way. That night, I sat in my office, looking at the photo of me and Mom on my desk. She'd always believed in me, always told me I was stronger than I knew. I wished she could see me now, leading the company I'd built, standing up to the family that had tried to break me. I wasn't just fighting for myself, I was fighting for her, for the legacy she'd left me, for the future I wanted to create. Nathan could scheme all he wanted, but I was ready. This was my company, my story, and I wasn't done writing it. Over the next week, Nathan's sabotage became a full-blown campaign. He didn't just stop at the clients. He started reaching out to suppliers, spreading rumors that Carter Supplies was on the verge of collapse, that I was an unstable leader who'd tank the company. I heard from one of our biggest suppliers, a man named Greg who'd been with us for years, that Nathan had called him, claiming I was planning to sell the business to a competitor. "I thought you should know, Rosie," Greg said over the phone, his voice concerned. "I trust you, but this guy's stirring up trouble." I thanked him, my jaw tight, and hung up. Nathan wasn't just trying to undermine me. He was trying to destroy everything I'd built. I spent the next few days in damage control, meeting with clients and suppliers, reassuring them that Carter Supplies was stronger than ever. I showed them the numbers. Our revenue was up, our market share growing, our employee satisfaction at an all-time high since the profit-sharing program started. Most of them believed me, their trust in me outweighing Nathan's lies, but a few were hesitant, their confidence shaken. I couldn't blame them. Nathan was good at spinning stories, always had been. But I was better at building trust, and I wasn't going to let him take that from me. I worked late every night, calling every contact I had, making sure they heard the truth from me, not Nathan's twisted version of it. By the end of the week, I'd managed to stabilize things, but the stress was taking its toll. I was exhausted, my eyes burning from lack of sleep, my shoulders tense from the constant pressure. I thought about confronting Nathan directly, but I knew that's what he wanted, a public fight he could twist to his advantage. Instead, I decided to let my actions speak. I doubled down on the Carter 2.0 plan, rolling out the first phase of the tech upgrades and announcing the leadership training program. The employees noticed. Conversations in the halls turned from whispers to excitement, and I started getting emails from staff thanking me for the changes. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was a start. Then, on Friday, Nathan showed up at the office. I was in a meeting with the operations team when Clara buzzed me. "Nathan's here," she said, her voice nervous. "He's asking to see you." I excused myself and walked to the lobby, my heart pounding but my face calm. Nathan stood there, his arms crossed, a smirk on his face. "You've been busy," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Spreading lies about me, trying to tank the company?" I crossed my arms, mirroring his stance. "I could say the same about you," I replied. "You've been calling clients, suppliers, telling them I'm unstable. What's your end game, Nathan? If you can't lead, you'll just burn it all down." His smirk faltered, but only for a moment. "You don't belong here, Rosie," he said. "You never did. This is my company, my family's legacy." I stepped closer, my voice low and steady. "This company is mine because I built it. You don't get to waltz in and claim it after doing nothing. You want to keep fighting? Fine. But I'm not going anywhere." He stared at me, his eyes narrowing, then turned and walked out without another word. I watched him go, a mix of anger and determination settling in my chest. He wasn't done, but neither was I. I'd fought too hard to let him take this from me, and I was ready for whatever he threw at me next. A month later, things started to settle. Nathan's sabotage attempts fizzled out. Most of our clients and suppliers saw through his lies, and the ones who didn't came around after seeing the company's continued growth. He stopped showing up at the office, and I heard through a mutual contact that he'd moved to Atlanta, chasing some new opportunity that would probably fail like all his others. Classic Nathan, when things got tough, he ran, leaving someone else to clean up his mess. I didn't care where he went, as long as he was out of my company and out of my life. I'd won not just the vote, but the war for respect, and I wasn't looking back. Dad, though, was a different story. A few weeks after Nathan left, he came to the office, waiting for me in the lobby. He wasn't in his usual suit, just jeans and a jacket, looking smaller, older than I'd ever seen him. "I'm not here to fight," he said as I approached. "Then what are you here for?" I asked, my voice cautious. "To talk," he replied. We went to my office and he sat across from me, his hands clasped in his lap. "I thought I had time," he said after a long silence. "Time to teach Nathan how to lead, time to ease you into something smaller." I raised an eyebrow. "Smaller?" He sighed, his shoulders slumping. "I didn't think you'd outgrow the role I had for you." I leaned back in my chair, my voice calm but firm. "I didn't outgrow it, Dad. You just never saw what I was already doing." He nodded, his eyes meeting mine. "You were right about the vote, the shares, the company. All of it." It wasn't an apology, but it was close, closer than I'd ever gotten from him. "I don't need your validation anymore," I said, honest but not cruel. "But I need you to understand something. This company isn't just numbers, it's people, purpose. I earned this." He looked at me, a flicker of pride in his eyes. "I know," he said quietly. "I'm retiring fully. I'll keep a small stake, but the rest I'm transferring to you." I didn't move, didn't react. "You should have done that years ago," I said. "I know," he replied. We sat in silence for a moment, two people finally seeing each other clearly, and when he left, I felt a weight lift, not of anger but of expectation. Carter Supplies thrived under my leadership. We hit new revenue records, expanded to 3 new regions, and our employee satisfaction soared with the profit-sharing program. The leadership team became more diverse, more innovative, and I started mentoring young women in the company, showing them they could lead too. I thought about Nathan's words, "You're worthless," and how they'd once cut so deep. Now they were just a reminder of how far I'd come. I wasn't worthless. I was the CEO, the architect of a $60 million company, and I'd earned every inch of it. One afternoon, I overheard a junior employee talking to a new hire. "That's Rosie Carter's office," she said, pointing down the hall. "She's the reason I want to be a leader someday." I smiled, a quiet pride filling my chest. That was the real victory. Not the vote, not the shares, but the impact, the legacy I was building. I'd turned betrayal into strength, and I was just getting started. It's been 6 months since I took over as CEO of Carter Supplies, and looking back, I can hardly believe the journey I've been on. We're stronger than ever, new contracts, happier employees, a future that feels limitless. I walk into the office every day with a sense of purpose, knowing I'm not just leading a company but building a legacy, one that's about people, not just profit. I think about the girl I was at 16, hauling boxes in that dusty warehouse, dreaming of making my dad proud. I didn't just make him proud, I surpassed him, surpassed Nathan, surpassed every expectation they never had for me. I'm not the helper anymore. I'm the leader, and I'm here to stay. Nathan's gone, off chasing his next failure, and I don't wish him ill. I just wish him far away. Dad and I have a tentative peace. He comes by the office sometimes, not to meddle but to watch, to see what I've built. I think he's finally proud, not of the daughter he wanted me to be, but of the woman I am. I've let go of the anger, the hurt, because I don't need it anymore. I've found my place, my power, and no one can take that from me. I've also found a new family in my team, in the women I mentor, in the community we're building at Carter Supplies. This is what success looks like. Not a name on a door, but the lives I'm changing, the future I'm shaping. I think about that day in the office when Nathan called me worthless and how it lit a fire in me I didn't know I had. It hurt, yes, but it also showed me who I really am. A fighter, a builder, a leader. I took that pain and turned it into power, and I'm stronger for it. I'm Rosie Carter, the woman who built a $60 million company from the ground up, who faced betrayal and came out on top. And if I can do it, so can you. So I want to ask, what's your story? Have you ever been underestimated, told you weren't enough? How did you fight back? Drop a comment below, I'd love to hear from you. Maybe tell me your city too, so we can connect over the battles we've won. I stood in my office that evening, looking out at the Charlotte skyline, the city lights twinkling like stars. I thought about Mom, how she'd always believed in me, how she'd left me those shares as a final gift, a way to claim what was mine. I thought about the employees who now looked to me for guidance, the clients who trusted me, the future I was building. This wasn't the life I'd imagined at 16, but it was better. I'd turned betrayal into triumph, and I was just getting started. Life tests us in the hardest ways, but those tests show us who we are. I found my strength, my voice, my place, and I'll never let anyone take that away again.